German Reformation, politics during the German Reformation. That is what we're going to be covering. Shouldn't take me long, so you should have a little bit of time, hopefully, to maybe start to bang out the other part of this. Does everybody understand what you're doing when I'm finished? Yes? Okay. I'll go over that again in a minute. But so like I said, with notes, you can follow along with me if you have a hard copy or if you have two different devices, or you can go back and do this as well. I would always, if you're going back, maybe keep a piece of paper next to you if you don't have a hard copy and maybe jot down some stuff if, just to refresh your memory. And even as you're watching the video, it'll like, oh, yeah, I remember him talking about that a little bit. All right. So Charles V, he's the Holy Roman Emperor. He was also called Charles the First, all right, the King of Spain. So if you're in charge of Rome at the time, Rome was over lots of different places, all right? It was very big over lots of different places. So he went by Charles V, but he also went by Charles the First as the King of Spain. He ruled an immense empire consisting of, you can underline this, Spain, the Austrian lands, Bohemia, Hungary and the Low Countries, the Duchy of Milan, the Kingdom of Naples, and Spanish territories in the New World. So Rome stretched far and wide. All right. It was a massive area that this guy was over. He wanted to keep his empire under control of his dynasty, which was underlined the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs. All right. He hoped to preserve his empire by keeping it Catholic. So when you go back to the other notes, you'll hear me talk about the ease of ruling people if they all have one moral guide that they go by, right? Religion tends to give people kind of their moral compass, right? We talked about morals being right and wrong and kind of those thought processes before, right? So if I'm in charge of a group of people, if we all kind of think the same, it's much easier for me to be in charge of that group. But if we have different thought processes going on, it becomes much more difficult. Does that make sense? Right. So when you think about like, if everyone is Catholic and the Christian mindset is dictating how people think, when I bring up a hot button issue like say abortion, if we're all Catholic, most people tend to think alike on that topic. Make sense? If I bring up gun control, for some reason we allow, or a lot of people allow religion to dictate how they think on all of those hot button issues. Make sense? And so if I'm in charge, I would want to keep everybody thinking the same, right? So if I'm in charge and I have everybody going to the Catholic Church and I'm giving my message of being the leader and the Catholic Church is on board with me, they're going to be teaching you guys a similar thing and we're all going to get along, right? So what he wants to do is keep everybody Catholic. But as we see during this Reformation time and these people breaking off and starting new Christian churches, it becomes much more difficult. Right? When you jump back to the other notes and you're doing them, you'll see how Martin Luther basically started a war. All right. He started a war. We might not think of it that way, but when you think of it, there was bloodshed. People were, enemies of the state, enemies of the church. Princes, literal princes were defying the Roman emperor. Those are acts of war. Okay. So over religion. And so you'll see that's why he wanted to keep everything, hey, we're all Catholic. Deal with it. All right. No matter where I'm ruling, it's Catholic. All right. However, he had other problems at the same time of worrying about religion. All right. His chief political concern was his rivalry with the King of France, Francis I. Their conflict led to a series of wars that lasted, 20 years. Charles also had problems with the Pope, Clement VII, who sided with the French at the same time. At the same time, the invasion of the Ottoman Turks forced Charles to send troops to the eastern part of his empire. So we see a kingdom or an empire being very divided on all different fronts. All right. Is it easy to fight a fight if you're fighting one person? Right? Which is easier, fighting one person or lots of different people? What do you think? One person, right? I see a lot of ones going up. You can talk, you can hit your microphone, right? It's easier to fight one person, right? If you've ever watched, an action movie, I always laugh when, the main guy is like, or girl is taking on like 15 people. Like the impossibleness of that is mind-boggling. All right. If you can focus, even if you're not a good fighter, if you can focus on one thing, you might be able to figure out how to beat that one thing, right? But if you're fighting on different fronts, you got people coming from behind, from the sides, how do you even set yourself up to fight all those things? That's what we see Charles V really in a dogfight. He's not only fighting to keep the Catholic Church, he's fighting the King of France. He's got the Catholic Church, the Pope, right? The Pope is the main guy who's siding with his enemy in the fight. So he's got even his own, he would think that the Pope is on his side and he's fighting that guy, right? He's like, wait a minute, Pope, right? I guess that's what you would call him, right? Hey, Pope, why aren't you on my side? Well, I like this guy better. Oh, great. So now I'm even fighting the guy who I'm trying to give power to. Remember, if everyone's Catholic, the Catholic Church has more power. More people equals what? More power. So he's like trying to make people happy. He's trying to fight. He's trying to do all these things. And then he's also being invaded, right? So he's got all these different things. This is the reason why the Roman Empire eventually fell. It was so big and it had its hand in so many different cookie jars that it eventually couldn't focus. And it just started getting picked apart. Make sense? And then it also kind of got destroyed from within because people got greedy, wanted power, yada, yada, yada. All right? That's what tends to happen when people get so big. So he's sending out troops. He's getting into big battles. It's getting kind of annoying. Many of the princes of the German states supported Luther. You're going to go back and read about Luther. All right? Luther was breaking off from the church, and his princes, the princes over Germany, were supporting that as kind of a, they call it like picking your nose up at the Roman Empire. They're kind of like thumbing their nose at him, like, you know what, I'm done with you. And by listening to Luther, by creating these new churches and breaking off from the Catholic Church, we see that Charles is like, okay, I'm even losing Germany now, all right? By the time that Charles V was able to bring military forces to Germany, consider that. He was using military forces, so it's a war to try to break apart anything that was going against the Catholic Church. The Lutheran princes were already well organized. Charles was unable to defeat them and was forced to seek peace. All right, an end to religious warfare in Germany came in 1555 with, and you need to underline this, the Peace of Augsburg. That was one of your reading check questions. All right, the Peace of Augsburg. This agreement formally accepted the division of Christianity in Germany. All right, so if I ask you a question or an essay about the Peace of Augsburg, you should be able to tell me these points. Make sense? All right, that what did the Peace of Augsburg do? It formally accepted the division of Christianity in Germany. The German states could now choose between Catholicism or Lutheranism. That's the religion that was created. Lutheran states were given the same legal rights as Catholic states. And the right of each German ruler was given to determine the religion of his subjects. So the subjects didn't get to decide if they would be Catholic or Lutheran. Who decided? The prince. Make sense? So each little area is broken up, had their different princes, like we have different mayors in all our different cities and towns. They decided for the people of their area, we will remain Catholic or we will be German or we will be Lutheran. Does that make sense? All right. And by choosing that, you were either kind of befriending Charles, right? If you said, I'm going to stay Catholic, you were befriending Charles. Marinara, are you doing like a TikTok dance? Are you all right? He has no idea I'm talking to him. Marinara, you good? Oh, now he's good. Okay. So you could, if you chose as a German prince to keep following Catholicism, you were good, right? You were on the Roman emperor's side. But if you chose to break off, you were kind of his enemy at this point. And even though you had the Peace of Augsburg, you were still kind of going against a pretty massive empire at this time that was breaking apart, but you were going against the empire that was in charge of you to a certain extent. Make sense? So it could be a very dangerous decision to make that if Charles woke up on the wrong side of the bed one day. He might just want to come after you. All right? So do we understand the notes? Pretty simple. It's a short section of notes. All right? So you should be done highlighting those. If you're not, I'm going to upload the video. That's going to take a little bit of time. What you can do, guys, stop with the hoods pulled up. Stop doing the dances. Come on, please help me out. So